built back up again. Quite a young client, got this very thick, glutinous, sticky wax, which doesn't really suction very well. You can't really use any other instrumentation because there's no opening and it's quite medially impacted. So when you've got soft wax up against the eardrum or the medial ear canal wall, you can't use a Jobson horn, for example, because you'll become in contact with the medial bony part of the ear canal, the sensitive part, and also the eardrum, so it'd be very uncomfortable. So I'm just having to dose the ear on regular occasions, and I've just developed a new technique. Well, I say it's new, I've been using it for a while. Initially, I used to put the olive oil drops in. So olive oil works really, really well with this type of glutinous sticky wax because it binds it together a bit like an egg in a cake recipe or sort of potato cake, fish cake, be it what it may. It binds it together and it makes it easier to suction. But what I used to do, I used to put the drops in for a few minutes and then ask the patient to drain the ear. So we used to tilt the head the opposite direction. I used to get the drops out. What I find in some occasions actually is I ask the patient to tilt the head over and I put the drops in and I suction whilst the drops is in the ear. You do have to be careful because it can get a bit blurry at times because the ear is full of oil and you're suctioning at the same time. But it's something that I'm getting more confident doing, and I think it in some patients' ears gives me better results. So you can see how well this oil's worked. We're just on this last plug of wax, very deep, medially. So the patient is quite young. They are in I think the patient's a carpenter. So the patient does advise that they do sometimes wear ear protection, which is good, and they should be. You want to protect your ears from loud sounds. And that could be one of the reasons why this wax is getting impacted, because the defenders go in the ear. So I have recommended over-the-ear ear defenders, which probably can be a bit more effective actually, what we call supraoral, and they can create a really good acoustic seal over the pinna, the main cartilage, the satellite dish over your ear, to trap more sound out. Other than that, it's just incredible how quickly it comes back, and it could be that the patient's quite active. So another anecdotal, this is all anecdotal, another anecdotal found. So if you watched one of my videos a few weeks ago, I mentioned about menopause and the anecdotal link I find with women with menopausal or premenopausal who are getting really dry skin, keratin buildup in the ear. I also find that younger people generally younger people who are very active or going to the gym a lot, they're also getting a lot of wax. So that could be because they've got this ceruminous gland. So people with sticky wax or wet wax, they have a particular mutation on the ABCC11 gene, and this mutation causes them to have a modified sweat gland, the same sweat gland we find under our armpits. We call that an alpocrine gland. So I'll come back to that in a moment. So we've managed to clear this. You can see it's nice and clear, healthy eardrum. Managed to get all the wax out. The view is just stunning there, the field of view. We could see everything in one view. It's just the patient's left ear, so very sticky like the right. I'm going to put some drops in. So whilst you're watching that, I'll just continue with explaining my anecdotal findings. So the patient has very obviously got this sweat gland because they've got sticky wet wax. When you exercise, obviously you perspire under your armpits. What's to say that these glands don't perspire in your ears, which is secreting more of this oily sweat, which forms part of earwax. So I'm not going to ask the patient not to exercise to see if by not exercising they have less earwax. But it's just a very anecdotal finding. There is some biology, physiology, there is some context to it, should I say. If I get time in the future, I'd love to research such things further. So managed to get some of this wax out without putting oil in, but I'm going to put some oil in a moment because it is blocking up the suction probe. You can see I'm wriggling the suction probe, trying to unblock it. And this here, the patient's got a scarred eardrum, so if you continue watching, it's what we call tympanosclerosis. Tympanosclerosis is a buildup of, it's a calcification, so calcium deposits are building up, I believe, in the middle membrane of the eardrum. So eardrum's got three membranes. The outer membrane is the same skin that lines the ear canal. The innermost membrane is the mucosa, which is similar to the skin that lines the inside of our nose. and throat and mouth. And the middle layer is a layer of fibrous and connective tissue in response to some sort of trauma. So it could be barotrauma, a pressure change, acoustic trauma, so loud sound, physical trauma, so an injury to the ear, or acoustics, so very loud. I think I might have said that, I'm not sure. They're the kind of the main potential causes. And in response to some sort of trauma, you can get calcium deposits in the middle membrane, and it builds up a scar tissue. Sometimes it can affect the patient's hearing. If you've got excessive, it can cause the eardrum to be quite stiff, so sort of absorbing the sound waves and transmitting it through the three little bones to the organ of hearing. The stiff eardrum reflects the sounds away. So you can see that tympanosclerosis at the bottom. I think the patient, their cause was due to an infection when they were young. They developed glue ear, so had chronic abscesses in the ear, which then